due to the current global economic situation. What are your thoughts on the relationship between inflation and bond prices and yields? Yeah. So usually what happens is when inflation goes up, interest rates go up a lot as well because governments want to keep prices under control. But usually when you there's only certain types of bonds that you can buy that are protected from inflation. And the one that I like to buy, and always do your own research first, is called Treasury Inflation Protected Securities. Okay, so it's called TIPS, Treasury Inflation Protected Securities. And what a TIPS is, or what a TIP security is basically a government bond, one that's issued, in this case by the US government, that goes up in value. The interest rate rises even if inflation rises. Okay, so you're protected from a rise in inflation when you buy TIPS, okay, which again are US government securities, meaning the risk is quite low, but the return is quite low as well because interest rates we know are quite low today and inflation is quite low. And so in the near term, I'm not really too worried about a rise in inflation. What governments have done around the world, and one of the reasons why we've seen this melt up in the stock market and other asset classes, including baseball cards, it's been crazy. But governments around the world have telegraphed and basically told investors and citizens that interest rates are going to stay low for a very, very long time. And they're telegraphing this because the economic environment obviously is not great. There's a lot of issues with people out of work because of COVID. Things won't get back to normal for quite a while, unfortunately. And so what the government can do is there's two types of medicine they can use to stimulate the economy, and this has nothing to do with COVID. The first type of medicine is called monetary policy, okay, which is the policy of money. And basically what monetary policy is the Treasury Department, or pardon me, the Federal Reserve of the United States and the Bank of whatever in different countries like Bank of Canada, where I'm from. So the Federal Reserve and the Bank of whatever in different countries, what they do is they control how much money is out there, monetary supply. And if they increase the amount of money out there, then just like with any product, when supply increases, price goes down. So when governments increase the supply of money out there materially, what happens is interest rates go down. That's monetary policy. Unfortunately, they can't cut interest rates anymore, really, globally, because rates are basically zero. So that medicine is done, okay, monetary policy. So what's the other medicine that governments can use to fix the economy? Again, medicine has nothing to do in this case with COVID. The other medicine they can use is called fiscal policy, which is basically everything aside from the policy of money, meaning non-interest rate ways to improve the economy or stimulate it. And so fiscal policy means cutting taxes or hiring a lot of people to build bridges, roads, all that sort of thing to stimulate the economy. Also, another way to stimulate the economy through fiscal policy, which is done by the Treasury Department in the United States. Another thing they can do through fiscal policy is they can actually cut checks for people and just to help stimulate the economy. A lot of people have gotten a lot of COVID-related checks to help them out pay their bills, which is the right thing to do. Now, when you run out of monetary policy and fiscal policy, it's kind of scary. And what happens is desperate times call for desperate measures. And so governments do other things. And I feel a little bit uncomfortable saying this, but this is what I believe happened last year. So last year in March, when the market bottomed, it was terrible, obviously. And then we started seeing a melt up. It didn't seem to make much sense. And so I believe that there are slush funds that governments have offshore to buy stocks. It's a very, very small amount of money they need to use to stimulate the economy. Like, for example, buying shares of companies that are heavily shorted. Not GameStop. They didn't do that. They definitely didn't do that one. But other shares in general. I'm not just saying it's the U.S. government, but hear me out on this. So 1/3 of the revenue of the planet, or 1/3 of the GDP, is from the United States, roughly 1/3. And people don't realize this, but 2/3 of GDP for the United States is consumer spending. It's not big business. It's consumer spending. And I think that China is more reliant on the U.S. than vice versa. And China is still an export-oriented country. And it wouldn't surprise me if you actually saw buying of stocks from certain governments around the world, and buying the most shorted stocks, which you don't have to spend that much money to get a melt up in those stocks, which leads to an entire melt up in the market. I think that happened. I do. So anyway, again, desperate times call for desperate measures. When you run out of bullets, so to speak, from a monetary policy and fiscal policy perspective, you have to be somewhat creative. In September 2008, when we were within 24 hours of bank machines not working, what the government did in many countries is they made shorting certain stocks illegal. So in the United States, in September 2008, the government came up with a list of 800 stocks that you're no longer allowed to short, meaning every bank and companies that seem like a bank, like GE, which is basically a bank because of GE credit, for example. And so anyway, those are my humble thoughts on stimulating the economy and what happened with the market last year with the market meltdown.